All right, so welcome to our World Lymphedema Day event, our talk, and I'm very excited because it is a really great way to be able to look at how lymphedema affects not only those of us who are here, and it might be that you're here in Alberta, like those of us from the Alberta Lymphedema Association or members of, or if you know people in other parts of the world, we know lymphedema is not just a local issue. So we thought that it would be a really great sort of day to talk about how lymphedema is looked at, viewed, treated, addressed, all of those kinds of beautiful pieces around the world. So, I've been a massage therapist in the city of Calgary now for 25 years. I absolutely love my job, but lymph became sort of the forefront of what my career is. And so I've been a lymphedema therapist now for a while. And I absolutely love what I do. I love teaching about lymphedema, and I'm very blessed because my job also allows for me to travel. So in the last 8 years, I have been an instructor teaching lymph drainage around the world as well as lymphedema therapy. So, teaching therapists how to become certified lymphedema therapists. And my travels have taken me to some amazing places. I've had a lot of very wonderful trips and travels and classes in the United States, including Puerto Rico. I've had the pleasure of traveling around Canada, love it, but also in Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, Taiwan, Thailand, and just it keeps going. And so, what I really got a lot out of it was realizing how the things that we think are very common problems that just must be us. Oh, it's just our issues. And these are just problems that we see. They are global issues. And every time we sit there and go, oh, there's just not enough practitioners here in Alberta, it looks really minuscule compared to going to Australia or, being somewhere like India and realizing that, our numbers are not really as bad as they could be as they are in some other places around the world. So I kind of put this together to look a little bit at just a quick little lymphedema overview, but then how we look at it globally around the world. So definitely, if you have questions, you can put them into the chat. If you're seeing the recorded version of this, you can always put questions into the comments section, and we'll do our best to sort of catch up and we'll put out emails and stuff. So just a couple of little things, just if if you're into lymphedema, you understand lymphedema, but maybe you don't know as much. There are two different kinds of lymphedema. So primary generally is genetic. It's passed down to us. Sometimes it's just a rare occurrence that happens at birth, and we don't really know exactly what causes it, but maybe you have big vessels or you have small vessels or you have, you know, bad valves, or there's a whole bunch of different reasons. But primary means that you were born with an imperfect lymphatic system, one that just doesn't work as good as it could. Secondary means that you were born with a great lymphatic system, but there's been damage along the way. Okay. So if I look at primary lymphedema, this is like if you have swelling at birth, we call it congenital or conatal Milroy syndrome. That means that there was swelling at birth. And actually, quite a low percentage of primary lymphedemas around the world are congenital. So the most recent research that I've been seeing is around 8 to 10% of all primaries actually are Milroy's. More often, it's sort of an influx of hormones that happens at adolescence, and then all of a sudden we have lymphedema praecox or Meiji syndrome, around 75 to 80% of all the primaries. More commonly in women, lucky for us, but it's there. And then the remainder is lymphedema tardum. And so that means over the age of 35, the lymphatic system just gets overwhelmed and the imperfections within the system become a little more obvious and we start getting swelling. So that's primary. Those are people who are born with it. So if you're born with it, it means that you have to manage it for your entire life. Until today, I hope tomorrow's a different storyline, but as of today, there are no cure. There's nothing that you can magically take or do to get rid of lymphedema. If you don't manage it, it does get worse and worse and worse as we go on. But great part is that if you do manage it early, you can help, prevent it from really progressing and keep it happy. A lot of doctors, and when we say doctors, I think the greatest way to say this is like GPs. Okay, general physicians are the ultimate at triage. Their job is to make sure that if you have a urinary problem, you see a urinary specialist. If you have, a uterus problem, you see, a uterus specialist, that kind of idea. But their job's not to like specialize in everything. That's an impossibility. And so, unfortunately, they see swelling. And one of the medications that tends to work really, really well for swelling is diuretics. And so a lot of doctors don't have a great understanding about lymphedema. So it requires a lot of like additional education and a lot of, advocating for ourselves. And so most often when we look at primary, because of gravity, lower extremities are more likely to be affected. So secondary lymphedema, which is I think what most people recognize worldwide, this is you had a great lymphatic system at birth, but something's been traumatized over the years. So trauma, surgery, radiation, lymph nodes removed, venous insufficiency, paralysis, filariasis, the little bug, like little parasite that gets like right in there and just likes to live in you. Those are all causes of how your lymphatic system becomes damaged. So one of the tests that is actually done very globally is called a lymphangiocintigraphy. So this is around the world, people go, oh, well, I have to get a lymphangiocintigraphy to prove that I have lymphedema. That's actually not the case. It is kind of a gold standard for diagnosing it, but sometimes just asking the right questions and looking at the health history and the symptomology, we don't need to do this. It's not a very comfortable diagnostic tool. It can be quite uncomfortable in the sense of they're injecting a dye between either your second and third fingers, or you can see on there it's showing between the second and third toe. Most of the time it's actually the first and second. But the pictures that we're seeing here is early on in the testing, they're injecting this big dye, and it's a really like large molecule, which means it can't get pulled back into the venous system. It can only get picked up by the lymphatics, which is why it's a great tool. So they inject this large dye molecule, it gets picked up, and then they do pictures over time frames, looking at how fast and how is that dye moving. So if we look at the pictures on the left, there's a picture of the front and the back of the limb, and you can see the, the dye is getting picked up. It's going along the inside of the legs, which is how it should go. But notice how on that left leg, it's really kind of bubbling out right around the knee, and it's kind of getting stuck and stagnant. And if we go even longer, like another hour or two, we can go take a picture again. And if this was a happy, healthy system, that dye should have already made it to the liver. So we should be seeing some really colorful sort of situations in the liver, and it's not there. So this dye is getting stuck and is stagnant. And that's one of the ways we can say, obviously, it's not draining properly. It hasn't moved past the hips. If anything, it's sort of stopping in the pelvis, but it's really stagnant in the lower extremities. So this is just, it's a way to diagnose. It's a very common diagnostic tool, and it does show you sort of where things are congested. So we stage lymphedema in the sense of we want to know how much swelling, and this is for both primary and secondary lymphedema. So if you're born with a, unfortunately, non-functional system, or it was damaged along the way, we want to know like if there's hardly any swelling and it's just kind of always on the edge, maybe it'll swell, maybe it won't. We call that stage 0, which is also latent lymphedema. Stage 1 means that you might get some swelling, but then it goes away, and then it comes back, and then it goes away. Stage 2 is now all of a sudden the swelling comes and it stays and it's not leaving. We call that spontaneously irreversible. And then finally, stage 3 is called either lymphostatic elephantiasis or just elephantiasis itself, just because the limb gets so big, plus it gets sort of nodules and thickening of the tissue, so elephant-like in nature. So the gold standard worldwide, and a lot of people sit there and go, like, seriously, there's got to be a better approach. This can't be this is the standard. So these four things coming together are considered CDT. And sometimes those letters are different. Sometimes it's CDP. Instead of therapy, it's physiotherapy. But it's a combination of hands-on treatment, using the right kind of compression, whether it's compression garments or it's compression bandaging, skincare, and then exercises. So these four things are the standard. There's no magical pill that you can get in New Zealand versus, doing some sort of herbal treatment in Switzerland. This is the gold standard. And in all of my additional research, because I haven't traveled everywhere, that would be really nice. And I'm aiming for that. But as of right now, I haven't traveled everywhere. So I did a lot of research, and it keeps coming back that this is still a standard of treatment. And same in middle of Africa, in Southeast Asia, in South Central America. So it is common. So this is kind of like the fun things we get to play with, right? We play with, the compression bandage wraps. We're doing compression garments. We're trying to get our patients to exercise. We're doing manual hands-on work, and we're doing skincare and education throughout all of this. So as I go through the rest of the presentation, one of the things that I think we forget about in Canada is that it's not, temperature-wise, environmental-wise, putting on compression bandaging or wearing a compression garment, it sucks. But when I was teaching in Puerto Rico in November and I was teaching about this, the faces of the students was like, "You want me to wear that all the time?" And I said, "Yeah, we just put it on and then we're going to wear this all day long." And I made my students wear it for like half of the day, and they just were coming back and begging to be in the air-conditioned room. And this was November. So they were sweating. They had walked over to the store to get a drink, or they had, living life in areas where it's hot, it's humid. It's hard to keep your skin really clean when you're sweating all the time. The mosquitoes and the little like the little tiny guys that just get everywhere. I put on bug spray excessively when I'm traveling, and I still get mosquito bites everywhere. The amount of sweat that you just put off, it's hard to keep the tissue clean. Plus, then also have dry bandaging. So, all the things that we take for granted, at least I feel in Canada, it's frustrating. And I don't like wearing my compression either, but I'm grateful I get to wear it in Canada and I don't have to wear it in some of these places. So, keep in mind, all of these pieces that are still the gold standard of treatment worldwide. It's a lot of an easier pill it's an easier pill to swallow here than it is in Thailand, than it is in Taiwan, than it is in Sudan, right? So all those pieces together. So one of the things we always need to talk about is something called lymphatic filariasis, because lymphatic filariasis is the little a-hole of a of a parasite bacteria that basically comes in, and this parasite comes in and lives in your lymphatic system, and it is the number one cause of lymphedema worldwide. So, what I love though is that the World Health Organization has a great page. I'm actually going to put the link here in the chat. So, if you wanted to use it, you're more than welcome to. So, you can go to that website and check it out. But they have a page that talks about which countries have filariasis, the prevalence of it, which ones have been working really hard in the last 2 decades to eradicate filariasis from their part of the world. So there's three different kinds of nematodes, parasites that can create lymphedema. So Wucheria bancrofti is the number one, causes like 90% of all the cases in the whole planet. Brugia malea and Brugia timori are the other two. They're less common. The great part is that like we can take types of like medication, chemotherapy wise, medication antiparasitics that will kill the parasites. The problem is you normally have to catch it before they start their reproductive cycle. And in my world, these guys are kind of like guinea pigs, like they're reproductive before you think they should be. Like you're like, there's no way that that guinea pig is pregnant. Like, come on, it's like 4 weeks old, and you're like, all of a sudden there's babies. These guys have a very early reproductive cycle. So what I'm going to show you is that the number of people with filariasis, lymphatic filariasis, this is back in 2021. This is the most recent one I could find. I know that there's a newer one, just haven't found it. So this is an estimated number of people with lymphatic filariasis because of the way, obviously, you're looking at areas that have lesser quality of water. So stagnant water that has like, parasites growing in it, mosquitoes, larvae growing in it. So it makes sense when you look at where it's not like this parasite's going to be like, oh, Canada's a good place to go and live in. No, right? Normal things would not live in Canada to live and survive through the cold, but filariasis likes these kinds of areas. And so obviously poorer countries, less water cleanliness, warmer temperatures. So again, this is going back 4 years, but India, definitely Southeast Asia and certain areas within Africa have the higher ratio of lymphatic filariasis. So this is actually looking in Sri Lanka. And in Sri Lanka, this is looking at the rate of microphilia basically in Sri Lanka. And what I love about this is if you look at the bottom, there's a chart and it shows you how many they had in Sri Lanka and how the rate has actually gone down from 2001 to 2015. They have worked very, very hard as a country to try and eradicate filariasis from the country and from the water sources and so on. So there's on that WHO website, they do talk about which ones have now completely eradicated filariasis, which is huge for lymphedema worldwide. For primary lymphedema, it's a massive success. So when I first started my training in the early 2000s versus today, it's completely different. So very hard work and a lot of dedication by their medical system. India, India, unfortunately, the population is so high and the poverty level is so high that a lot of the poorer places, and this is showing the areas along India's coastline and clusters of the poorer states that are the worst affected by the disease. So the number of people and the water conditions, if you're going to the richer areas of India, you're probably not going to see it. Unfortunately, that's where the big medical centers are that need to be treating it. But the people who are in these areas are obviously going to have a higher incidence of filariasis lymphedema versus others. And this is looking at Southeast Asia. I love this because, again, this is showing progression. So we're looking at progression from 2000 all the way to 2018. So the top upper left-hand corner is showing like areas down in Indonesia and Papua New Guinea. And there's areas in India that had very high areas of prevalence of like plus 30% of people who were affected by filariasis. Whereas if we look at 18 years later, this is the fun, I like these, right? Look for the purple. In the bottom right-hand corner picture, there's India, there's Thailand, there's Laos, Cambodia, there's Malaysia, there's Indonesia. Where's the purple? Like that is a lot of time and energy and effort put on by the government, by the health industry, by the World Health Organization. It just, as a lymphatic therapist, it just makes me so absolutely pleased. In Canada, I've really only ever seen one or two cases of filariasis or lymphatic filariasis, and very grateful. Not something that I've wanted to work with, not gonna lie. Um, but I teach a lot in these areas. I teach in Taiwan and in Singapore. I'm actually there for 3 weeks this summer. So I'm really grateful it's less purple and more green. I'm going to take the green. So let's look at sort of global treatments. And like I said before, global treatments, we are looking at still complete decongestive therapy. So the bandaging, the wrapping, the exercises, the skincare, all of those things across the board are the most common thing globally. And we always talked about how a lot of the research, a lot of the study of the lymphatic system makes sense, started in Europe. And so you look at sort of the amount of therapists, the amount of surgeons, the amount of new advancements, you think, oh, well, if that's where it started, there must just be that much more of a team, of a network. And there is, but it's spread significantly around the world, which was really encouraging as a therapist. I was very excited when I was putting all of this together. So this is actually a global map. This was an interesting one for me because this is looking at how long does it take to get to a healthcare facility around the world. And so this is showing you, obviously, you want to be in the bright areas. Yay for us here in Calgary. Woohoo. Yay for most of Eastern US, very, very bright. Look at Europe. It's like the whitest area, and I mean that in graphics. Um, and that means that if you need treatment, if you need to see a therapist, you have easy access. You don't have to drive for 3 to 4 hours. You don't have to drive more, right? So obviously, the more pink the picture looks, that's like up to 5 hours. Now, I do have therapist clients who come from 3 to 4 hours away, but they could get to a doctor, they could get to a hospital, etc. Now, this is looking at just healthcare facilities globally, not lymphatic therapists. I think that would be a really cool kind of graphic to discover. So if anybody's got that info, I'd love it. But look at all the areas that are dark purple and try and think back to filariasis as well. So a lot of those areas where they're more prone to having mosquitoes, having parasites coming through their system, they are technically normally a little bit further away from medical care. And we know that lymphatic medical care is less common than just a doctor who can give you antibiotics or, somebody who could do stitches, right? India looks extremely bright, and that's because the population's high. There are a lot of doctors. I have a really great slide about India coming up. But it doesn't mean that the lymphatic component of the medical treatment is there, right? So it's a different perspective. I've been to Australia 4 times now. I absolutely love Australia. And it's very true in Australia. If you don't live around the coast, you're kind of in the boonies. You're not very accessible to anything. You need to live around the coast. That's the option. So I think I don't know if the number's accurate, something like 3/4 of the population lives around the coast, and everybody else fills the rest of Australia. So, of course, the further north you go, my girlfriend who lives way up in Baffin Island, hey Lisa, she doesn't have access to a lot of medical stuff. So when she decided to go work up there, they were like, "How healthy are you?" Because we don't have a lot of medical stuff available, right? So it gets even worse as we look at lymphedema. This was really cool as well to find. And I've been researching lymphedema and treatments and things like that for years, and I love this. This is called a lymphedema diagnostic market. What this means is a lymphedema diagnostic market analysis examines the global market for the tools and the technologies that we use to diagnose lymphedema, including all the trends, the drivers, the forecasts, competitive landscapes, that basically help the businesses make their informed decisions on how to treat. So what I love about this is it's showing you that over the years, we've put more and more money. This is like millions of dollars USD, so American dollars. And this is looking at where the money has been put. So North America, that's going to be that dark blue at the bottom. Europe is that tealish color in the middle. And then Japan, China, India, the rest of sort of the Asian Pacific group, that's the green. And then the yellow, I was like, what's ROW? The rest of the world. So just think about that for a really quick second, because we're all sitting there going, thank God I live in the blue area, right? And then you sit there and you go, well, Europe's not too bad, but it would suck to be the rest of the world in this diagnostic. This is where the money is put. Are we looking at lymphangioscintigraphies? Are we looking at the newer research? Are we looking at medications? Are we looking at genetic research and diagnostic tools? Like, where is the money going and where is it sitting to make all those big changes? So I did put the link to this diagnostic market. If you wanted to look at it, there are some other ones that I saw, but this was the best kind of as a representative slide. So, but there are other ones you literally just have to type in lymphedema diagnostic markets. This one was by region. I did see one that was really specific per country, but it was too overwhelming to look at in one slide without being able to zoom in and really get into it. So. All right, so here's some Canada stuff. So what I love is there's more information now available about lymphedema stuff in Canada. And of course, we're all sitting here, and I think the majority of the people, if I look at the names that are here, look a little bit more Canadian to me. But the prevalence in Canada, this is the 2024. This is Canadian Lymphedema Framework, the graphic on the left. So prevalence in Canada, so 1.25 million for the 41.5 million population in Canada. So it does break it down. And what is interesting, um, Jennifer McNish, one of the other directors on the Alberta Lymphedema Association board, we've had some great conversations about, what is the number one cause? And when we look at what causes lymphedema for like years, 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 it's been breast cancer, cancer. You just blame cancer. It's a nice big C word that you just want to get mad at and just blame everything on. So we say cancer. But obesity related lymphedema has now got the number one spot. And not by a little. Like that's like twice the amount. So that's a very interesting thing to be seeing and looking at how the research is changing to look at obesity related lymphedema issues versus just cancer related. So I was really excited to find graphics like this too and just be able to share that. So there's disabilities in chair-bound, surgeries, non-cancer, and then we have primary lymphedema. So, there's lots of things there. And what I do love is, when we look at, the cost varying on the type of surgery. So in Canada, so basically on here it says one 2021 paper estimated the cost somewhere between 22 and $32,000, depending on the surgery. If you're going for surgical intervention here in Canada, that's the average that was given. Non-surgical treatments, however, are also very expensive, and we know this. This is a very common thing globally as well, is that if the government has the ability to assist in non-surgical care, they will, to a certain amount, right? Within the parameters of what they can. And then the rest of it falls onto the patient to look at private assistance. And so that's looking at private care, like a lymphedema therapist like myself. So, on average, that's still around $20,000 a year after it has developed, after we see swelling. But I do caution when we look at numbers like that, it really depends on what stage are you in and what part of your body is affected and how well are you maintaining things. And there's so many variables. And we've done a whole other presentation on the cost of lymphedema and treatment here in Canada. And we're just finalizing numbers to be able to put it together to be able to present it. So there is this really weird website though that I went to today. It was like the Alberta Lymphedema Associate. Yeah, I think it was the Alberta Lymphedema Association. And they had a really great link on their page showing you all the different connections you can make with the different provincial associations. So there's a BC Lymphedema Association, there's a Saskatchewan Association. There's a lot of support through Canada for lymphedema patients. So I jokingly say that because I love the ALA, obviously. And there's a lot of things that are there for patients and to help with advocacy. So a lot of really great stuff. And again, tons more we could talk about Canada, but we only have so much time. The US, the lovely US. And we're going to just keep it to this slide talking about the US, people. I'm not going to go further. This is US. Okay. The Lymphedema Treatment Act. It's one of my favorite things about the US with lymphedema is they went and they created something called the Lymphedema Treatment Act. Now, this graphic was before it was actually enacted, which was January 1st, 2024. That's when it was became effective in the USA. And so this is actually sort of getting people to try and, support it and make a difference and so on. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what the Lymphedema Treatment Act is, because if you just knew that it passed, that's great. But this is what it does. So the Lymphedema Treatment Act itself creates a new Medicare benefit category to cover the reimbursement of lymphedema compression garments and supplies. So prior to this act, many compression garments and other treatment items were not guaranteed reimbursement. We all understand that. And that forced a lot of patients to obviously purchase based on the affordability rather than the medical need. And as a therapist, I always have for clients, I'm like, this is what I would love for you to wear. But if you can wear even just this, that's better than nothing, right? So this was basically to benefit anybody who had a lymphedema diagnosis. Now, we all know also the hardness that it is sometimes to get the official diagnosis, but it was one of the prerequisites, which is fine. Medicare coverage can receive any of the Lymphedema Treatment Act benefits. So this covered standard and custom fitted gradient compression garments, other approved items that were prescribed by the physician or a healthcare professional, bandages, supplies for any phase of treatment. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid implemented this policy, and it was passed by Congress to address the issues basically of limited Medicare coverage for essential lymphedema treatment supplies. So it was a result of a lot of advocacy efforts by organizations, individuals, the Lymphedema Education and Research Network. There is so much work put into this, and it was a huge win for the lymphedema community. And it was very exciting to see once it passed in the US. So it was a great coup. Loved it. Europe. Now, I could to go through every country, let's just put this simply, was not about to happen. Okay. Like I have things I have to travel next week, so obviously I have to prep. But anyways, in Europe, Europe has a lot of great resources for lymphedema patients. Like I said before, complex decongestive therapy or complete decongestive therapy, the most common. So in Europe, for example, in Switzerland, there's the Swiss Lymphedema Framework, and it's this umbrella organization for professionals and patients, lymphedema and lipedema diagnosis and treatment. They have this amazing Whitlinger Lymphedema Center. They do a lot of amazing work there. In Germany, Germany was impressive when I was researching because there was actually like 14 different hospitals in the country of Germany that had surgeons being able to do not only lymphaticovenular bypass, which we also sometimes call lymphovenous anastomosis or bypass surgeries, suction-assisted lipectomies for lymphedema, and vascular lymph node transplants. And it it still costs money. It's not like it's magically free in Europe. I think a lot of people have this misunderstanding that they're like, I'm going to show up in Germany and it's just free. But the accessibility to these hospitals and the surgeons, now it ranged anywhere from 7,000 euros to 22,000 euros, depending on the surgery and stuff like that. But the access was amazing. If we look at a country like Canada, we have 4 or 5, surgeons that are really comfortable doing these types of surgeries. In Germany, there was 14 hospitals in that small country. So it was really encouraging. And, Germany does have, it's kind of like the grandfather of lymphatics treatments. If we look at Vater and we look at Foldy and we look at a lot of, the initial treatments sort of came out of Germany and out of Europe. So yeah, a lot easier to find over there. Great Britain. So in Great Britain, it's estimated that there are around 200 to 450,000 people living with lymphedema. They have the British Lymphology Society, very, very supportive. I'm going to put the link for that if you ever wanted to go and check them out. They look like a really cool group. So in England, patients with lymphedema typically find treatment. They contact their GP, similar to what we do here. They get referred to a specialist lymphedema clinic at a local hospital. They're assessed, they receive treatment. There's all these there's British Lymphology Society, Lymphedema Support Network, but they do the same thing. It's very similar to what we see here in Canada. So Southeast Asia, So Southeast Asia, there is a wonderful chapter of Learn that's in Southeast Asia, and there's actually some very, very cool research that they had done. So this is the South Asia or Asia Pacific chapter, the link that I just put in there for you guys. In Taiwan, where I get to go visit, I'm heading there in the next 2 weeks here. There's the Changjiang Memorial Hospital. So it has an amazing lymphedema treatment center, innovative lymphedema treatments, vascular lymph node transplants. And they also do, it's called, I want to research this a lot more, but it's called super microsurgical lymphovenous anastomosis, which in my mind is just an LVA, but I've never heard it called super microsurgical. So now I'm going to see if I can go and visit them when I'm there in a couple weeks. So they do amazing work. And so also there's Singapore, who down at the south end of Malaysia there, and they do a lot. They have the Lymphedema Society of Singapore. They do a lot of resources. They do, for the size of that country of Singapore, a lot gets done there. So very encouraging. Australia. So Australia, they have the Lymphedema Association of Australia and amazing group again. So this is my colleague. She's the in the picture there. She's the second from the right. Her name is Sophie O'Neill, and amazing lymphatic therapist that I met about 12 years ago. And so her and I were chatting, and she would basically said, she goes, okay, so patients who are suspected that they might have lymphedema, they referred to go get, a reading for official diagnosis. They have one at their local hospital, but unfortunately, she said there, a lot of the doctors don't know what it is, very similar to here. Um, so it's mostly referrals from lymphedema therapists like her. So they get referrals sent to their doctors as well to them. So doctors will send a referral to the hospital, but also to the CLT. So they have a few options there for treatment. They can either see a lymphedema therapist privately, or for those who can't afford it, they go to the hospital, runs a clinic for lymphedema post breast cancer. But if it's not post breast cancer, very similar here. So for any other kind of lymphedema, she actually started another clinic. It's called the Tamworth Community Lymphedema Clinic. They're in their third year and funding is approved for another 3 years. I need to tell you about this though, because this is truly inspirational and I'm like, we need to hang out. So it's held once a month with three therapists for a full day. It is sponsored. So the therapists are paid via a sponsor and it's absolutely free for the clients. So they measure, they'll order and fit for garments, wraps, help them navigate the process of applying for any kind of grants, et cetera, to help them get the costs of products done. So they were able to get a private sponsor to basically support the treatment and the advocacy for these patients. Yeah, it's only like, one full day a month, but still that gives access for those patients who have absolutely no access. Tamworth is not a big city center. It's a cute little, she's like a farming community is what she tells me, but so they have a lymphedema support group that meets bi-monthly. It's actually one of the most active support groups in all of Australia. They sign up with the Lymphedema Association of Australia. They provide support. And there are different state groups in Australia, but um, they basically have now been asked to come and talk at the big Lymphedema Association conference to try and help create other clinics like this around Australia. So um, yeah, it's a great thing, and to be able to find a way to provide care for people who can't afford it, it's just, as a former clinic owner, absolutely devastating when you cannot provide care for those who desperately need it. So I was so absolutely proud of her. And yeah, she's done so much work. So it's been really good to see. This is India. So India, I was actually supposed to go and teach in India this year, and things got changed a little bit. But basically, in India, patients who have lymphedema can seek treatment at very specialized hospitals. They have these beautiful hospitals like the Apollo, the Max Hospital, where they can access like expert doctors, comprehensive treatment plans. They do compression therapy, manual lymphatic drainage, they do surgeries. All these things are there. And lymphedema surgeries there can average anywhere between $6,000 to $14,000 US. So again, it's not like you're showing up and getting the discounted version, but it is a little bit more affordable than it would be potentially in the US or even sometimes in Canada. So depending on the severity of their condition, but most major cities in India do have qualified doctors to manage lymphedema. You have to remember as well, the population of India is astronomical. So India has 7.44 million lymphedema patients caused by lymphatic filariasis alone. And there are 470 million people at risk. The Canadian population is 39 million. Like, it's just mind-boggling. So these are the 10 top hospitals in India, and all of them have a lymphatic lymphedema component in those hospitals. So absolutely amazing. And yes, I do see that from LymphWell Collective. So there is an Institute of Applied Dermatology in Kerala, India as well. Absolutely. These are just the top 10 that sort of popped up as for lymphedema treatment, et cetera. But I guarantee you there's more. But again, it's the transportation to get to those locations, the financial component to be able to access that. Um, and I can't even imagine currently what would be the wait time to get into those places based on the population alone. So huge. China, actually, I leave for China next Thursday. I have been very blessed to have taught in Shanghai, China, 3 times in the last year. This will be my fourth time, and I go 2 more this year, teaching lymph drainage therapy, building up for lymphedema therapy cause. So there's actually really cool, interesting things that I learned about some treatment stuff that they found in China. So there was they did a whole research article. I just put the link in here. It's the efficiency or the efficacy and safety of far infrared radiation in lymphedema treatment, clinical evaluation, and laboratory analysis. So basically what they did is this is the conclusion here is that after therapy, a significant decrease of limb circumferential measurements were noted and improving the quality of life was registered. Laboratory examination showed the treatment can also decrease the deposits of fluid fat, hyaluronan, and protein, improving the swelling condition. So they believe that far infrared treatment could be considered as both an alternative monotherapy and useful adjunctive to conservative or surgical lymphedema procedures. So furthermore, the real and significant biological effects of far infrared represents possible future applications in a wide range of medical fields. So this was they in China, that Southeast Asia Pacific group of Learn, they have an initiative called the Lymphedema Care Action, which is about raising awareness, providing treatment options. They've done a lot of work in educating, et cetera, all around China and Southeast Asia. What was really interesting is there is quite a bit of research, this one makes sense, about traditional Chinese medicine in regards to lymphedema. So there is a lot of research that shows about acupuncture and Chinese herbs and the benefit in working with lymphedema. Now, I'm going to precursor this is that just like a regular massage therapist might not be able to work with lymphedema because they haven't specially trained, an acupuncturist would be the same. They would need to have additional training to work with something like lymphedema. And so there is very specific herbal prescriptions that are designed to address lymphedema symptoms because lymphedema is looking at chi and blood stasis, so very sort of wet dampness within the body. And so when I went and taught in China for the very first time, every time we talk about things, they would say, or we could do this for the meridian, or we could do this for the, and I love that. So they have a lot of different approaches using acupuncture, moxibustion, however you want to say it, because they're looking at dispersing the dampness that is found within the body and the stagnation. So what also was discovered was this treatment called heating and bandaging method. So this was developed in Shanghai. This was a way of basically applying heat using infrared rays combined with compression bandages. And that was very specific for treating lymphedema because of filariasis. So this was actually started way back in like 1964. And the inspired method, they developed the very first infrared ray heating apparatus. And I couldn't find any pictures I was trying to see, but they used the heat from the infrared red, elastic bandaging as well, and they put it together and they got really crazy good results. And so the edema was almost totally reduced in some patients, and to date, many patients have been treated with success. This is even documented as far as like 1994, and there's even new research that they're doing about that infrared. So that was the link that I put in there for you. So this heating apparatus, they created this new version of it. Originally, it was way done back with like heating fires and kilns and urns and stuff. And it came to a point where they were able to create something more like microwave technology. But so they've been able to use this apparatus now in, where are they saying now? Japan, Italy, and the USA. So research into the treatment of thermotherapy on lymphodematous limbs is starting to show that heating might actually stimulate local immunological defense for the tissue and increase the circulation of fluid and macromolecules, which is kind of like, if we go back, kind of been contraindicated. So this is helping to control inflammation, reduce edema. So that was even research from 93. So there is, and they're still building on that. So being able to have, that's not even stuff that we talk about a whole lot, but to see that that's kind of where it originated from. For the longest time we went, oh no, it started all in Europe. Well, there's been stuff percolating over in Asia as well. So it's good to see the combination of everything coming together. South Africa, so they had this physiotherapy practice in lymphedema research article that they did. I'll put the link, but basically it's the link that's at the bottom left-hand corner there. And what that link is talking about is how physiotherapy and lymphedema work in South Africa. And what they did as research is they found out that it came down to the knowledge of the lymphedema management to be lacking in the majority of physiotherapists. So this was done to a point where now they're looking at, building up more of the strength of the education. But it was encouraging to see that this was even something that they had been looking at. So there's a very strong support, very strong lymphatic support groups within South Africa. They've been doing like runs, they've been doing, they have this beautiful group. And in that group, it's the Lymphedema Association of South Africa. And on their site, there are 110 therapists in all of South Africa. So definitely they need more CLTs. They need more physios that are sort of educated on the foundation of it. But international treatment standards, they're still growing to meet that. So I know the educational group that I teach with, we've been to South Africa once. I think, political unstable sort ofness has changed over the last little while, so we might go back, but definitely a high need in South Africa. I will say in a lot of Africa, it was very hard to find statistics for obvious reasons. They're not measuring as much, which makes it hard. So Central and South America. I didn't know this, but in 2020 or in 2003, the very first Latin American conference on the management of lymphedema was held in Argentina. So this is only like 20 years ago, but they've had quite a bit of development in how they're working with lymphedema in Central and South America. Sorry. So they still do very similar treatments to what we do here. Again, it has everything to do with how many therapists are found where and the accessibility. So the further south and the further west, there tends to be less and less therapists and harder access. But there's still trying to work. There is surgical treatments that are available in South America. They're still able to sort of look at those different pieces. I'll put a link to the article that I was able to find. The more that I was reading into it, there's a lot more we could have gone into, but it was really encouraging to see that there is that build of knowledge trying to happen in South America. And then I also was able to find, this is looking at basically, it was really hard to find a lot of information on the poorer countries, the ones that have the least amount of support. This is a comparison done between Bangladesh and Ethiopia. So what they noticed is there was a lot of lack in lymphedema knowledge, self-care practices, and they did this case study where they took a group of people and over 24 weeks, they taught them how to do treatment, they taught them how to do self-care, they taught them how to basically take care of their lymphedema. And by doing that, they had, daily performance. So basically it says daily performance of lymphedema self-care can improve clinical outcomes. And we know that here, but the lack of medical professionals that are able to support this kind of treatment, self-care, is very difficult to find in both Bangladesh and Ethiopia. So they were noticing that by doing this over 24 weeks and supporting and training over that period of time, really improved clinical outcomes, really helped with social inclusion for sufferers. Patients' community level ownership of the program was very essential for sustainability. There's a lot more that they need to do, but in the end, the people faced with lifelong chronic diseases were able to be guided for appropriate and acceptable recommendations for self-care and provided with the necessary tools to achieve it. So on the right-hand side, it sort of shows like this is how many patients they started with, that top row. So that's talking Bangladesh. There was 146 patients with 146 caregivers, and there was 36 health workers. Now they did over 24 weeks, they did lose 10 patients, 10 caregivers for multiple of reasons, family reasons, financial reasons, whatever. An analysis is there was 136, and they were able to show that over the course of just being supported in 24 weeks, which sounds like a long time, but in the grand scheme of a lifelong condition, it's very minimal. And if we're able to help educate, support, and train them on how to take care of themselves, their outcomes increased, their ability to engage with the rest of the world, their ability to support others was significant. So going from this, they're looking at even increasing these kinds of case studies in other communities just for overall quality of life. So it was extremely encouraging to see. I loved that this was even done. So there's so many countries that we could go into, and every time I travel to a new country, my job is literally I'm just trying to find out how lymphedema patients can be helped even more, because we all know it sucks. And we all know that it's a lifelong of learning and support, and anything we can do to help anyone around us is well worth the time. So I wanted to say I am absolutely so proud of the Alberta Lymphedema Association, all the things that they're doing for World Lymphedema Day, all the things that they're, trying to advocate for and support, and the different publications, etc. So they're working very, very hard, and I can say I am too because I'm part of it, but we work really hard to try and get accessibility and advocacy out there, and we love working with as many people as possible. We're always looking for volunteers, how to connect with more people, how to reach out to other communities. On my own personal side, I have LymphyCon. This is my big lymph conference, happens at the end of April. I've got doctors and researchers and lymphedema patients and lipedema patients and a whole bunch of different presenters coming for 2 full days. It's a weekend of like learning about lymph and your lymphatic system and lymphedema and lipedema, and come learn how to make your own healthy chocolate to support your lymphatic system, or take a lymphatic yoga class, or learn about how, how your lymphatic system works with menopause. It's a whole weekend about your lymphatic system. And I would absolutely love to see you there if it's something that just, fills your boat, or if you know people who feel like they need to have more of that and more of that connection. That's the whole point, right? It's let's give you the information so you can live the very best life that you can. So I I love March. March is my birthday month. March is Lymphedema Awareness Month. And I'm so glad that you had a little bit of time to come and see how lymphedema is in some other countries around the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Robin.